In this demonstration, we're now going to take a look at log analytics in the Azure portal. And if you're not too familiar, log analytics has undergone a number of changes recently. So if you looked at this maybe a few months ago, basically early in January 2019, Microsoft ultimately changed everything around, and log analytics, ran through something called the OMS portal primarily. And now things have all been migrated and blended into the Azure portal as a whole, which makes it a lot easier to get to. So let's head over to the Azure portal and we can show you how to get started there. Now in the Azure portal, a couple of things to be aware of. As you probably saw from when you looked at monitoring earlier on, we can go to monitor and there is a section here called logs. And this is essentially where we can query and analyze all the logs coming in using log analytics. If I click logs straight away, what you'll see on the right hand side as it loads up here is the workspace for log analytics that opens up. Now you might already have a default workspace in there. In my case, I've moved over and actually told it to look at the log analytics workspace I've created. I'm going to show you how to create one of those in just a second. If you're unsure, just go ahead and click the little settings, select workspace option here. And this is where you can change the subscription and workspace that you're connected to if you so desire. But with that said, let's go ahead and create a brand new log analytics workspace. And this is where you'll connect data sources to. This is where your logs and data come into, and then you can query them and create graphs and nice charts and everything else from there. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll go to create a resource and we'll type in log analytics. That comes up and we'll click create. And you can see here, first thing it says create new or link existing. So if we want to, we can link to an existing log analytics workspace that we have out there. I don't have one in my case, so I'm just going to go ahead and create a new one. But if I click create new, we'll be prompted for the name. So I'm going to call this AZ demo temp, because I actually already created one which we'll use for the demo, but I want to show you how this gets created. So I'm just making this one temporary in my demonstration. I choose my subscription because I do get charged for log analytics, as you'll see in a second. And then I choose the resource group or just give it a new one. So let's call this temp log analytics RG. Choose the location where all the data is going to be stored. So I'll just use East US. And then my pricing tier. Now, historically, there were a number of pricing tiers, but the new arrangement is basically per GB. So you just pay for the storage utilized. It's a simple pay-as-you-go model that you basically have now. With that said, we'll just click OK. And that goes ahead and initiates that deployment, and that'll take maybe a minute or so. Now, while that one's deploying, let's go ahead and look at one that I've already got created. So I'm going to go over to Resources. I'm going to scroll up to Resource Groups. And you'll see I've got a resource group here called AZ Log Analytics. If I click into that one, you'll see what I've got inside here, which is a couple of VMs. I've already pre-provisioned, so I've got a Linux VM, a Windows VM, which I'm going to use to show you some of the logs and performance reporting. And more specifically, if I scroll to the top, this is my workspace, AZ Demo Workspace, Log Analytics Workspace, which is in East US. So if I click into that, that'll take me to my Log Analytics Workspace. And on the right, before we begin, you'll see Getting Started with Log Analytics. It's got things like Connect a Data Source, Configure your monitoring solutions, and then maximize your experience by searching and analyzing logs and managing alert rules. And we already covered alerts and action groups already, which is something you can link to Log Analytics. And search and analyze logs is where we're going to spend a bit of time in this demonstration. Now, before you can go ahead and search and analyze logs and get anything meaningful, you do have to connect data sources to Log Analytics. Basically, you've just created an empty workspace. There's no data being fed into Log Analytics. So if you scroll down, the first thing you want to do on the left-hand side, if we scroll all the way down, you'll see Workspace Data Sources. And if I click Virtual Machines to begin with, and you'll see here I've got Linux VM 01 not connected, and I've got WinVM, my Windows VM, connected to this workspace. And if you had lots and lots of machines, you might connect them all to the same workspace. You might connect them to other workspaces. The good thing is you can query across workspaces. You just have to specify the other workspace when you get to that point. But the major point being here is that this is where the logs are being sent to. So this Windows VM, I've already configured it to send logs to this workspace. Now, how do we configure it? Well, let's do it for the Linux VM because that one's not connected yet. So if we click this one, and you'll see there's a simple item at the top here. It says connect. See, it says not connected, status not connected, no workspace name, VM is not connected to Log Analytics. If I click connect, it will go about connecting that VM in here. And essentially there's an agent that runs on the machine that pushes the data up to Log Analytics. So we'll let that one go ahead, but the good thing is we've already got that Windows 1 connected, so we can start to pull data from it. Now, there's a few other things we need to configure as well. So aside from saying, connect my VMs in, and you might not want to go in and click every one of these each time, so you can automate that in a couple of ways. You could do it using Azure Automation, or more specifically, a lot of people, one of the Azure Security Center settings is to make sure the VMs send their log data in as well. But with that, let's jump to the top a little bit now. So I'm going to go up to the advanced settings, because it's one thing to say connect the VM to Log Analytics, and you can see here, if I go to advanced settings, connected sources, Windows Server, one Windows computer connected. Linux should still say 0 because that one's not configured. Here are the manual steps to configure it as well. So you can download the agent, you can log into the machine, install the agent, and then use these keys to connect it in if you want to as well. Again, that's how we connect services in, and you can see that Linux VM 1 has completed while we've been going through this demo already. Now, if we go to data, next thing we can see here is the Windows event logs, Windows performance counters, Linux performance counters, etc. And we can go here and choose the log that we might want to send over. So perhaps we type in system, and we can send the system log from Windows across, and we can press the plus sign here. And now it's going to send the errors, warning, information logs from Windows across there as well. We could type application, and we could get all the application logs sent across as well. So just remember, this is the same as on a Windows server. If you log in and go to your event viewer, you'll see those logs there, and it's the same concept basically. Same for performance counters. If I click down, go to performance counters, remember we've got all that data from the hypervisor that Azure basically can monitor already there in our metrics section. But what if we want to get additional data like logical discounters, memory, etc.? These are all OS-based metrics that we want to get from inside the OS. We can simply click add the selected performance counters. Here they are. Choose the interval you want to collect in, and those will be added as well. If we go down to Linux performance counters, same concept. We click this little box at the top first of all, and here we've got a whole bunch of Linux counters here that we can add as well. And again, we can continue on for other counters and logs that we want to add. And when we're done, we simply click save, and then that will adjust those settings for us. And there we go, configuration was saved successfully. If we scroll back over to the left all the way now, I'm going to drop all the way back down on the left hand side. I know we're sort of jumping around a bit, but it's just the nature of the menu system here. So again, we've got VM as a data source, and that's connecting those VMs in. Where I just was now in advanced settings, that's the type of data I want to collect from those sources. But there's other sources we can have as well, like storage account logs, Azure activity log. This is a very common one. A lot of people use the activity log, and you can see here, here's my subscription. And if I want to get the activity log for that entire subscription, I can click this one here and connect that in as well. And now Azure is going to send those activity logs, all the things that happen in that subscription, up to Log Analytics as well. So you can see it's very powerful, but can get very large very quickly because you start to connect more and more data sources in. You can have custom data sources as well, and you've got a lot of data going into Log Analytics. So that's step one. And if you are doing this and trying to follow along from a demo perspective, make sure to do this, connect a bunch of VMs, maybe run some performance, intensive application on them so you get some data kind of sent in, wait 30 minutes before you kind of proceed with kind of the next things that I'm going to show you here. So if we go back over to AZ Log Analytics and go into our workspace again, now what we'll do is go to the log section. So I'm going to go down and click logs. Now again, I can go to Azure Monitor on the left hand side, scroll down, click monitor, and I could click logs from in there. I'm ultimately getting to the same place. I just need to make sure I'm looking at the same workspace. But lots of ways to get to the same information, and that can be a little bit confusing at first. So don't worry, just make sure you're in the correct workspace to begin with. So here we are, and I'm going to scroll to the right a little bit, and you can see this is the query area where I can ultimately run queries. Now Microsoft does show you a bunch of them below, select queries for heartbeat, performance, usage. Again, there's those tutorial sections on the right as well if you want to get more information. But I'm going to start you off with just some simple things to try, first of all, to get used to the platform. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit here, and then immediately let's go in and type a query. Let's start with a very basic query in this section, and we can go ahead and type perf if we just want to look at the perf logs, and you'll see the IntelliSense starts to complete that for you. But if I just type perf and click run, you'll see it's gathering the data, and here are all those different counters. So you can see logical disk on the Linux VM, disk transfers, 3 megabytes, performance, etc. those are all there. I can also go in and just type in heartbeat as an example. Now the heartbeat tells us if the agent has ultimately checked in. So again, just heartbeat, nothing else after it. You will notice if you type in with IntelliSense and you tab through, it'll sort of fill it in for you and get you onto the next thing, which we'll come on to shortly. But if you're just trying to type heartbeat, make sure you don't have anything else there, just heartbeat, and then click run. And then you can see how it's putting in that data. And I can click into one of these, click through here, scroll down, and we can see what machine it came from. So we can see Windows VM01. Here's the IP address of that machine. Scroll further down again. We can see that type heartbeat. So that's our heartbeat data that we've got there. Well, that's not super useful just by itself. I mean, if you just want to get data of all the heartbeats, great, and you can certainly choose to put it in a table or other formatting if you want to, and you can filter by time range on the top here as well. But probably a little bit more useful. Let's say we just want the heartbeats from Windows VM01. So I'll do heartbeat, and I'll do pipe to where. So I can tab through that, where, computer. Again, I'll tab through. You do equals equals, so that means is equivalent to, and I can put quotes win VM 01, and let's actually just check the spelling of that. It is case sensitive, so yeah, win VM 01 looks correct, and click run, and now I'll get that data, and it'll just be all of the heartbeats for win VM 01. Okay, so we're starting to get something here, but what about if I say, okay, I just want the heartbeats where the time generated was in the last hour. So again, we can pipe that again, and I can say where. I can do time generated. Again, we can tab through because it does help you here. We can do greater than ago, and then we can put in there 1H for 1 hour, and click run again. And let's see what happened there. Oh, it should be a lowercase h. So we hit that and click run again. And we can see here's all our heartbeats, and if we look at the timestamps, they're all within the last hour. Okay, so that's heartbeats, useful if we're just trying to troubleshoot as an agent checking in and maybe troubleshooting the service itself. But something that's very common are events. So let's go to event. Again, we can type in just event, and actually I do this every time I'm trying to create new queries, is I just query the service I'm trying to get it from, just to make sure I've actually got data here. So as you can see, there's only one event ultimately coming in right now from WinVM01. Well, it's a new machine. Not too much has happened with that machine, but I do have an event ID that I can use to show you something, a little bit more advanced. So I can say, well, what if I just wanted events where event ID, so where event ID equals, and I can do that event ID 7036. And if you're not sure what that event ID is, it's a common one, just shows that a service has entered a run-in or stopped state. In this case, it's the WMI service in Windows itself. I can click run on that, and that will pull up that log. And again, I've only got one right now, but if you had lots and lots of events from Windows that were pulled in there, then those would come in, for you as well. Okay, so that's events, heartbeats. Let's go back to performance, because that gives us a little bit more data to actually play with. So if we go to performance now, so again, perf, I can do where, time generated, again, ago. So I can do, say, 1 hour, and I can do where counter name equals at quote percent space processor time and end quote. Again, make sure you got the space between the percent and processor and time, and then click run. And as you can see on the bottom, here are all of our counters for processor time. We've got counter values, the instance that's affecting. So you can see you got Linux VM01 here. And we can tab through here. If we keep going, you'll see we've got some WinVM01 and Linux VM01, all with different kind of processor, CPU utilization. Now, that's not super easy to view in a table, so perhaps we want to render it as a time chart. So what you can do now, a little bit more advanced, you can basically pipe this, to a summary. So summarize, and then we can do average. So we'll say the average. I can tab again here. I'll choose the counter value that I want to actually filter on. So this is the counter value. That's this column that you see here, which actually has the value of CPU time. Now I can do it by computer. So if I want to, I can say by computer, And then we can do with a bin size of, let's say we want to do every 15 minutes. So time generated 15M. And then we can say, okay, we want to render a time chart out of all of this. So a few extra things we've added. We're summarizing by the counter value, by the computer, and we're using a 15-minute interval there. So let's give that a go and run that one. Okay, we've got a syntax error here, so let's see where that is. Okay, it looks like I just forgot to close a bracket right here. So we'll put that one in and click run. And there we go. There's our visualization. And you can see right now it's called Linux VM 01. Not seen much data for WinVM 01. You can see the little dot down here, and that might just be that hasn't got enough data for it. Now we can also zoom in a little bit, so we could change this time generated to be just say 1 minute, and the graph will start to form a little bit better, as you can see, because now we're sort of breaking it down in 1 minute intervals, and we can see there's some CPU activity within those thresholds, but there wasn't when we just kind of looked at the 15-minute bucket averages that were there as a whole. So with that, that's how you query logs. Now, you're not going to keep going through all logs here. This will definitely get you what you need for the exam. Just know how to kind of read these, understand how they work, and then you can basically go from there. Now let's move on to alert rules themselves. Now what you can do is you can take the query that you have and immediately go in here and click new alert rule. So any queries that are out there, anything you find out, on the web that, other people have created around log analytics and the queries, then you can basically go in here just like we did with alerts and action groups previously. The only difference being that your source now is going to be the workspace. You'll need to define the conditions that happen. So you can click in here and decide, what is your signal logic that you basically want to query on. So again, here right now, if you put your query in, it's going to take the last one that you had and actually put it right there. And then you would put your alert logic below. Now, just doing something off a query like a time chart isn't probably super useful. It would just be things like, okay, number of results. If there's a lot of results greater than X, then maybe set an alert. But you could do things like number of heartbeats received. You could use those queries, and then you would just carry on as normal. We're not going to revisit this right now because we already covered action groups. But you would choose your query, choose your conditions, and then choose your action groups just like you would everything else. And that's one of the beautiful things about Azure. Is just the way that you can use the same concept from action groups to decide what to do with events, and the events can come from different sources, whether that's something like we're looking at now in log analytics or some of the metric monitors that we looked at in one of the earlier demonstrations as well. So we'll come back out of this now. I'm going to come out of action groups and rules here and go back to our workspace. Here we are back in the workspace, and the last thing I want to show you are the solutions area. So if you are coming from a previous OMS background, solutions used to be in the OMS portal. They've all changed now. They've embedded solutions directly and now on the left hand side. Now to get solutions in here, you no longer have the menu inside of log analytics. You go to the marketplace for them. So if we go up to the top left and click create a resource, up comes our marketplace, and if we scroll down on the left hand side, you've got management tools, and on the right hand side, if I expand the featured list here, you'll start to see all those plugins that previously existed. Again, if you're familiar with log analytics before, common ones: security and compliance, patching through update management. This is a common one. A lot of people are looking at this now to even replace services that perhaps they had on premises before, like even Blade Logic and things like that. So if I click in update management and say I want to add this pack in, this comes with a whole bunch of dashboards, a whole bunch of queries, a whole bunch of additional things that you can utilize. This one actually uses Azure automation to do a lot of patching and things like that, and you simply click create. I'm going to zoom back in a little bit here now. Choose our log analytics workspace that we want to use. I'll do AZ demo workspace, and then you'll see there's some additional settings that you sometimes have to utilize. In my case, this particular marketplace edition requires that we have an automation account as well. So in our case, you would create an automation account. This is Azure automation, covered in a different lecture entirely, that I could create here and now, or if I had one already created, I would simply select it. But I don't need to go and set that one up now. I'll show you a couple others. So if we go back to the management tools section, one common one is this security and compliance one. So if we click this one and click create, similar concept, select your workspace, and recommended solutions I might want to add as well. Click create, and that one's going to go ahead and deploy, and we'll fast forward here while that completes. Okay, and that's completed, so we'll go to that resource, and to access it, we go to the workspace and then into solutions, and then we would select, in our case, this anti-malware solution there. Now again, just to remind you where to get to that, we can go back to the workspace, Log Analytics Workspace. Sometimes you get a few blades deep and it's hard to find. If you're in the workspace, scroll down, go to solutions, and there you will see that security and anti-malware solution that's in place. I can click the security one now as well, and you'll see on the right hand side some of these dashboards that are already now created for us. And you can also basically get the queries as well. So any of the kind of pre-created little widgets that you like, you can go ahead and gain the queries from those as well, just like Security Center. Now, again, if we go back one more time, the last thing I want to show you in this section, I know this is a pretty big demonstration, is the View Designer as well. So if I click the View Designer, this is a place where I can take queries and start to design my own little widgets based on queries as well. And there are some pre-canned, it'll show you how to do it. So if you click the donut as a common one and put this on, this is the overview tile. So this would be the overview that you would then, click into to drill down and get more information. And then you've got the View Dashboard where you can put additional things in there. Maybe it's lists of queries, maybe it's number lists. It's information you want to show. Maybe it's stacks of line charts of performance. Maybe your favorite application that you're troubleshooting, that you work on day in, day out, and you admin, you want to create your own dashboard for that. This is where you essentially would do that. If I go back to the overview tile for a second, you'll see how when I click the donut, in my case, it's pre-filled some things for me already because we've got perf logs, heartbeat, and Azure Activity. Those were those data sources that I was connecting in previously. And I can give a name for this view. So we'll call this Nick's view. Give it a description if you want to. And if you scroll down here, you can see those queries. So here's the search. It's summarizing the aggregate value, and it's purely just a count of those particular logs of perf, heartbeat, and Azure Activity. If I scroll further down again, you can see we can modify the colors and things like that as well, and do any data flow verification that we want to, which is not in scope for what we want to do right now. But with that, once I'm done, I can simply click Save. And then now I've essentially created my own view. So you can see Nick's view here, and then I can click into there. There won't be anything there because we didn't create anything in that second section. But if I want to, I can continue to create more and more views inside of that major view. So again, I'm drilling down deeper and deeper as I go, but I do have to facilitate that with a query at every single level. And then if I want to, if I go back to my overview, if I want to, I can pin this to my dashboard. So I can say, okay, I want this on my main dashboard in Azure. Now it's pinned. I can click the dashboard, takes me to my main section, and I can rearrange this just like any other dashboard widget I've got, but now I've essentially got it here and I can put it in, any dashboard I want. So a lot of power, a lot of things to cover in log analytics. Key things to remember: know the basics of the query language, know how to read queries, know about the View Designer and the solutions that have ultimately been moved, because that did go through a lot of change. And last but not least, just again, remember the alerts and the action groups, just like you had from the previous demonstrations. And with that, that concludes this demonstration.